This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another one of our speaker series. Today's the 15th of June. We're halfway there, folks. All right, today we have Aboubacar, who has a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from New Hampshire University. He is a bridge designer in HDR's Boston office. HDR is an employee-owned design firm specializing in engineering, architecture, environmental, and construction services that's actually ranked number 6 among the world's design firms and the largest healthcare design firm as well. So without further ado, let's pass it over to Aboubacar, who's going to tell us a little bit about himself and what he does. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in. This is great.
Of course. Thank you for the introduction. I go by Abu as well, so you can call me Abu if that works better for you. I'm a bridge designer at HDR Boston. Our headquarters is based in Omaha, Nebraska. As a bridge designer, I do various things such as field inspections for bridges around New England, not just Boston. So we get the chance to travel. We have that opportunity to travel outside of Boston to do inspections with the team. But we do a lot of design calculations as well with different bridges that we work on, that we design, again, in New England and outside of New England. So those are some of the main things that we work on a daily basis. So when it comes to a bridge designer, those are some of the things that we just continuously work on. So if you have anything specific to those things, yeah, I can go into details, but yeah.
Great. So there's a whole bunch of questions that I have, and I'm sure that people will jump in with their own questions as well.
Yeah.
But the first one that specifically I'd like to know, did you ever wake up in the morning one day and realize that, hey, my passion is engineering? Or did you ever think that you'd go into this way, or how'd you come about going into engineering?
That's a good question. I did not wake up one day thinking I was going to be an engineer. That was never the case. I woke up, first of all, I'm originally from Guinea, so I immigrated into in the US when I was about 14, 15 years old. Um, so my father and we all lived in Guinea. I grew up there as a teenager, and then my father was kind of like he was a little bit of a mechanic. He used to work with certain type of motors that he used to fix for for cars and whatnot. And so I used to just follow him all the time at work. I used to go wherever he was with his friends after school here and there. And so in school, I was also better in doing math than anything else. So I wasn't very good at I wasn't the best reader or the best writer in school, but when it came to math, I was pretty good at that. So growing up, that was my strength. I was able to build that, and that's pretty much all I learned when I was at home. All the homework that I had, I was always better at doing math related problems and anything else. And so when it came to moving to the US, when I came here, it was easier. That translation was easier for me to continue that strength with mathematics than anything else. So I was able to apply the same thing, although I had to learn English, but I was able to kind of the transition for me was easier because I had to only focus. Although I had to focus on everything else, but math was always there as a scapegoat per se. So I was able to grasp that, and then once I got to by the time I was finishing high school, I had my mindset put on, okay, I think the one thing that I can succeed in when I get to college is math related subjects, and so it's easier to become an engineer that way than become or try to become an English teacher where I really wasn't good at writing or reading. So I made that choice then, and then I pursued to become an engineering student. It wasn't an easy task, it was very challenging. But after 4.5 years, I was able to complete the degree and graduated, and now I work as a structural engineer. So I'm thankful that I took the path though. So that's what I would recommend anyone to try to do.
Well, more power to you because I still can't do math.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Could you walk us through what a bridge inspection might entail?
Absolutely. So so bridges, there are different type of bridges. We mainly deal with steel bridges, concrete bridges, and wooden bridges, right? So they're timber bridges. So those are the three type of bridges that we deal with on a daily basis. Um, we we design usually steel bridges are more likely to be designed than concrete or timber bridges because they're easier and they're most of the times they're cheaper to be designed. So when it comes to bridge inspection, we I've personally only inspected a steel bridge, a steel and a timber bridge. Those are the two type of bridges I've personally like inspected in the past. And so there are also different type of inspection. When you go inspect, there is the first type of inspection is kind of like just going out in the field and seeing the physical bridge itself and looking at it from eye view standpoint and seeing if there's any deficiency you can pick up by just staring at a bridge, just physically looking at it. So that's one type of inspection by just going there and seeing, just looking at the bridge itself, its surrounding, its layout, and see if you could pick up anything. And then there is the second type of inspection where you actually need to go and do what we call a fracture critical inspection. So what does that mean? What that means is you have to actually not only be there and physically and look at the bridge, but you also have to um, go and pretty much see there are members of the bridge that you have to actually be in close contact with, that you have to really analyze and make sure that there is nothing specific wrong to it. And some of those fracture critical members are like, for instance, the girder. So like a bridge has a beam, right? A steel beam, and then it has on top of the beam it has the deck. And most of the time below the beam, and the beam sits on what we call the bearings, and those bearings sits on the abutments, which are kind of like standing and holding everything, the superstructure above. And um, so most of the time when we go out in the field, we focus on the superstructure. So anything below the bridge, the substructure, we don't really like pay too much attention to. We look at it physically and see if there's any deficiency in there that we can kind of point out into our inspection report, so the client knows what's happening. But we don't really focus too much on it. So, but with respect to the superstructure, whether if the bearing that's where the beams are sitting on, if that's bent a little bit, if there is some cut in it, we have to like make sure we report all those small details, because those are anything any sort of cut or like bent that takes place into those members is going to be significant for the longevity of the bridge itself. And so when we inspect, in person and go out and do that fracture critical inspection, that's what we have to kind of focus on and make sure that there is nothing small or specific details that are like bent, cut, or any deficiency that you can really pick up from your eye standpoint view that could like make a difference into your reporting and your analysis in the future. So
Wow.
sorry,
It
I
seems like
hope I didn't go too out of limb there.
no, absolutely. No, it seems like so much. And I was like, I know your business's slogan is "We exist to make great things possible." Like now
Mhm.
having that slogan and then going and looking for the tiniest maybe micro fracture or a bend or whatever, or calculating how much weight can go onto these large structures. Do you get nervous when you do your job at all?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, our our job really is, it's not that easy, right? It's a very challenging task. I do get nervous sometimes, because and again, sometimes as a young engineer, we're told not to get too nervous because we have this like gap of like oh, just worry about learning, like, learn and ask a lot of questions, right? So continue to ask questions. Don't get tired of asking questions. Whether you think your question is dumb or not dumb, just ask questions, because by asking it, then we can see whether or not it makes sense to the task at hand. And so sometimes I battle with that, like asking questions, because sometimes you have the pride of like, oh, I think I know that. I don't need to ask that question. Like that's an easy task for me. I know how to do that. But asking the question is the right way to go. And we have a lot of people in the industry where they are waiting for you to ask questions so they can help you, because you can't, in our industry, you can't just find anything or everything online on your own, or like figure things out. Sometimes the person with the most experience might know something that you can never find anywhere else. And so, sometimes people have not been able to, write those up and like for everyone to like see per se, right? So, I get nervous, but I get more nervous for those who are signing off on like, drawings to be out, to be used in the field for constructions and things of that nature. So if you are, for instance, a professional engineer, which I'm not yet, but I'm working towards that. By the time once you get your PE license, then you're kind of like recognized to be able to sign off on drawings of any kind. It could be a bridge design that you've done somewhere. You can sign off on it, and your name is on that task. So if for whatever reason something small goes wrong, then you will not be able to sleep at night, right? Because now you're constantly thinking about that, and so you have to be able to meet a certain timeline in order for your for you to not be indicted or anything crazy like that with respect to what you're looking to do. And so I get nervous at times for sure, and I can't deny that. But again, I just you have to kind of go with it and make sure that every single day you're putting your best foot forward. Every single day that you're looking out and making sure that everything you're working on isn't really going out of limb in a sense. So it's not an easy task, but that's how it is.
I hope the kids watching at home are taking notes. So remember, ask questions. That's great because I was taught it's okay, mistakes are teachers, which is why I'm not an engineer.
It's a good
So
one.
with the whole the professional engineer's license, and but so you move to a new country, like 6 years later, you're working for a lead engineering firm. And what else does your path kind of include? So you're working towards your PE license. What's your end goal? What would you like to do?
That's a great question as well. My end goal, I'm always working towards my PE license. Again, that, like I said earlier, it's not an easy task, but it's a lot of work. But hopefully, I could get there. But I'm also working on different other, side projects of my own, because I came from a community of where people, not many people had opportunities, and so I'm trying to make the best out of my opportunities. Um, and so in turn, I can kind of bring those opportunities to those who do not have those opportunities or never had those same chances per se. So um, my end goal is it's kind of, that's a tough question, because I feel like I don't have an end goal. I can't really like see that far out, because I'm trying to while I'm looking at the future, but I also want to stay present and like see what's the short term goal, not the long term goal per se. But eventually, if I can continue to really like learn and become a better engineer, become a better human being, be in a place or position where I can really bring light to my community with respect to whether it's engineering or otherwise, then that would be essentially my end goal per se. I just would like to continue to do what I'm doing and learn as much as I possibly can, bringing people together. And hopefully, I could have my own engineering company one day where I can employ people and teach people everything I've learned. So that would be pretty much my answer to that question.
So we know that math plays a huge role in what you do. What kind of software do you use, and is it hard to use? Like, did you have to maybe take some classes in college to learn how to use this software? Or is this another thing that you might learn from your mentors or other people you've worked with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So while in college, you get to use you take certain classes. So like in your junior and senior year, that's when you take a lot of classes that are related to some of the software you're going to use in the field, or I guess as a professional. And so while in college, there was maybe like two, three specific software that we were taught to use. Like AutoCAD is one of them.
Right.
That's used to like just do all the drawings and stuff like that. Revit is another one of them. Um, Kind of like does the same thing, the same process. So again, these softwares in when you're learning them in school, because the pace of learning them in school is so fast, it's hard to retain most of the information. And so the best way to really learn these informations and keep them with yourself is by um, having internships through companies. That way you're enabled to like use these softwares more in a real life setting, and you'll be able to retain those informations better, because then you can keep a note of what you need to learn and what you don't need to learn. That's the way I was able to like keep most of these information and retain them. So again, you all the softwares that I'm learning now and that I'm aware of using now, I never used some of those while I was in college, because sometimes the school also don't have access to some of these softwares because they're a little more expensive and stuff, and so they don't have the ability to just purchase all these softwares because they're not all again recognized across all platforms to be used. An example of that is a bridge rating software that we currently use called Ashtoware, and Ashtoware is used to like rate the condition of a specific bridge. And so it's a very expensive software, so I never used it in school, but while working, I had the chance to learn for the past 2 3 years. And so now I'm at a point where you still have glitches, and like you have to learn a lot more about the software and what it does, but at least I'm more familiar with it now than I was back when I was in school. So yes, that's pretty much the answer to that. Some of the software you will use in school, AutoCAD, which is general with respect to civil engineering, but other than that, every other software, just be ready to learn, and while you're a professional.
Thank you. What kind of I think I remember reading on your website, your job also, maybe not you, but your company itself, responded to an earthquake in Alaska once. Now, does your company, or what do you do? I'm trying to think like in terms of environmental changes, like what's the schedule that you have to follow in order to go inspect your bridges, or like after say like a big blizzard of some sort, is that like or like maybe if there was a tornado in western Massachusetts,
Hmm.
that maybe crossed over a bridge in Worcester that happened a couple of years ago. Is there some sort of
Yeah.
a timeline, or like did you have to go back out and re-inspect things, or has it ever happened at all to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. That scenario has not happened to me. So whenever we're going to inspect, obviously, like we go through a process of coordination with police detail, because sometimes we have to close down roads before we go out in the field and stuff like that. When it's weather related, we look at the weather very closely before we go out there as well. So nothing earthquake related I've experienced. But like sometimes we might schedule to go out in the field and it might end up raining. So when that happens, depending on how the rain is, I think the team leader in the field at the moment can kind of make a decision whether or not to stay or not stay. So those are discussions that we have within team with the team before we go out. But we definitely schedule based on what the weather looks like, all the detailings that we need to have out there with us. Um, but nothing too dramatical with respect to earthquake that I've dealt with personally. So couldn't really speak on that. But we do our due diligence and um, check every the weather and all those small details.
Now you mentioned that you kind of have been around New England. What specific areas do you inspect for bridges? Is it more local to you, or you mentioned traveling? Do you go deep into Maine or New Hampshire or anything like that?
So I have not personally been deep into Maine. I do have some coworkers who have inspected bridges down in Maine. I'm currently working on a load rating for bridges down in Maine, actually. But for instance, with respect to traveling, I've been to New York. I've inspected the Whitestone Bridge. It's that big, long bridge between Bronx and
Okay.
Bronx and I don't know
Queens.
what's the other
I don't know.
city on the other side. I can't remember. But so I've inspected that bridge and actually planning to go back again during this summer. Hopefully, if things settle down a little bit with respect to COVID and all that, we should be going back there and inspecting that bridge. So I've inspected those bridges. We've inspected a couple of railroad bridges here in Massachusetts as well. So I haven't been down too deep into Maine, but again, I have a lot of coworkers who go down there to inspect those bridges because we have offices also all the way all around New England. So although our New England headquarters is here in Boston, but we have offices in Maine, we have offices in New Hampshire. Um, so yeah, we sometimes we get to use the teams that are located in those offices in Connecticut to go to those places closest to them. But if for whatever reason they need more team members, then they will reach out to us in the Boston area, and we get to go out and assist them.
Since, geez, I feel like structural engineering is so broad, right? And structural engineering is what you went into. And you said how like you were really good at math and that's what you enjoyed and that's what you wanted to follow. Would you ever wanted to go branch off into a different branch of engineering at any one point in time, or did you want to go straight into structural?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's funny you bring that up because I I chose structural not because like the my first reason I was choosing structural was because of my advisor. So I was given an advisor in school at UNH at the University of New Hampshire, um, who was super nice to me, right? Professor Cook. He was super nice to me. He was just he welcomed me the very first day when he saw me, and once he was delegated to become my advisor at freshman year, and then I had a couple of conversations with him here and there. Because I was undeclared. I forgot to mention this earlier. I was undeclared my freshman year because in the business school actually. So I was still although I wanted to go to engineering, I was still trying to figure out how to get into the engineering school. So I needed my freshman year. Sorry for bringing this back up, but like my freshman year at UNH, I needed a 3.0 GPA in order to go into the engineering school. So I had to like build that up my freshman year, the first 2 semesters. So once I was able to build that up, and then I spoke to my professor. I was like, "Hey, I have this grade now that you were looking for. So could we continue with the process?" And then that's how I transitioned back into the engineering school. And once I got there, because again of my relationship that I set with my professor, and because of my background of where I grew up, I wanted to see like nice buildings being built or nice bridges being built. Because subconsciously keeping that in the back of my mind, I felt like okay, my professor is a structural engineer and he could teach me a lot more. He seems like a likable person. I can come to him whenever. So him for him to give me that comfort made me want to go into structural engineering more than any other path. So if I had a mechanical engineer advisor, maybe I would have thought about that more. But because I had that relationship with this specific person, I was able to like build that confidence and then went into that. And I had about 3 classes with this specific professor throughout my career, my student career at school. So and it was great because again, he was able to give me the guidance I needed. Being the first person to go to college in my family, so I never had any other experience. So whenever I saw someone was opening the door for me, I was more inclined to stay in touch with them and more inclined to learning from them and following their path in a sense.
That's great.
Yeah.
So after a while of being around the States and working as an engineer, do you plan on going back to Guinea at all to help build or maybe share your skills there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've thought about a lot. Guinea is one of those countries that will, still in need of people to come and really make a difference with respect to transportation, right? So it's something I think about all the time. That's why I mentioned earlier, creating my own company. Hopefully, one day is my dream. It's not going to be an easy task. It'll be a lot. It'll take a lot. But I want to be able to go back in the future to Guinea to see if I could incorporate myself somehow and in society and see how I could really bring my skill set to use. I think as of right now, with my learning process, I think I'm still too young into my career that I need to learn more. And so staying here and really like grasping more knowledge is best for me. And I'm under some good leadership where I could, just gain and absorb as much knowledge as I possibly can. And so I don't think by going to Guinea right now will serve me or Guinea for that matter, because I won't have anyone there who specifically focuses on bridges. Because I think looking at doing some research on Guinea or in most African countries in general is that they do a lot of outside hiring. They hire a lot of outside contractors like from China and whatnot to come in and really like do those type of design. And so it's a tough task to have to deal with that because of the government setup and all that crazy stuff. But but it's definitely in the back of my mind to like definitely go back and help in some ways of form. So
That's great. We're coming up towards the end. I have another question. Is there any advice that you would give any of the young kids who are watching, or any advice to anybody in general who would want to follow in your field, as from what you learned so far? Because I mean, you definitely mentioned that you're learning, shooting for that PE license. What kind of advice would you give, following, this awesome journey that you've had so far?
the advice I will give them is the same advice I've given to like a lot of my little brothers and sisters is that you need to if you're young currently and you're in high school or middle school, learn to teach yourself how to self motivate. That's a very I think it's key in anything you do. And the reason why I say that to people is because I, I came to the US knowing no English in 2010, and then I only had 2.5 years in high school to learn English and also get the grades in order to get to college. And so I was able to do that within 2.5 years of learning English and getting to college. But then once I had to make a decision to go to college, I decided to go to a predominantly white school in New Hampshire where I knew no one. I had never been to New Hampshire before. I have no family in New Hampshire. But then I made that decision because I wanted to self challenge myself and also give myself the opportunity to continue to self motivate. So I think the advice is be willing to put yourself in uncomfortable positions so you can learn more, so you can gain more knowledge, and so you could really like stay on the pathway of really being successful in whatever it is that you might want to do. And so self motivation is a big thing. And another example I could give to any young kid out there with respect to self motivation is I had a lot of friends in college who went to the prep schools before they went to 4 year university. So they had pretty much all the college readiness you could pretty much think of that I personally didn't receive before I got it. But some of them ended up either failing out of school or leaving the engineering school to go to business school, just like making decisions that they didn't like. So If it wasn't for self motivation, I don't think I would have been able to get through my college career. And so a lot of people don't have that. So if you can teach yourself that, whether it's just by playing sports, teach yourself that at a young age, I think that will come in key once you get to college. Um, and in pretty much anything that you want to do. And so again, I'm gonna say this: it's not something. A lot of people think it's hard. It's not doable. It is doable. It's not going to be easy, but if you want to have some sort of success at the end of the tunnel, so you have to be willing to take those challenges and just like hit them head on, and you'll get through for sure.
Great. Thank you so much for coming in. This has been great. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Kinakalia Abu.
Yes, you may.
All right. So thank you so much for coming in, and we learned so much. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Good luck getting your PE license.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.